Okay, so we'll call this meeting in order. We're all here, so we don't need a roll call. This meeting is being recorded by Greenfield Community Energy and Technology. If any other persons present joining the same, you must notify the chairperson at this time. We have the minutes that John sent out to everybody.
I did. I'm sorry they were late. They just started posting the videos back to GCTV, and I was able to then take the audio and turn them into minutes, which I should be able to do from now on.
Are they going to be on? Are they going to be posted in a timely manner now?
Well, yes, because if I can do them from the audio, then I can have them done. If you approve them here, then I can post them on.
No, I mean
the video.
I'm talking about what we've said is up on the website. Will it be up on the website from now on, or are we still going to wonder whether it's up there or not?
Which, the video?
Yeah, in order for us to put the video on our website,
it has to be on GCTV.
Yes, and you told me the other day it's not been.
It hasn't been. They've gotten them all back up again. I think they just went through a period where they were a little discombobulated. So they should be back up again. They're missing 1 month, and I have sent an email out going, "Hey, where is that month?" And I haven't heard back yet. So.
In a black hole.
But if you go onto the website now, all the agendas are posted, all the minutes that have been accepted are posted, and the videos that do exist are posted.
Okay, so the motion was accepted.
So moved.
There's a second.
I'm finishing reading them. Yes, second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay. Aye. New business.
Can I back up?
Mhm.
I haven't read them, so I'm just going to abstain from them.
Yep.
I just need longer than that to take a close look.
Got
So
it.
thank you.
Okay. Next is public comment. Okay. New business. The first one's easy. We were going to show you a bunch of pictures of the new installer van, but it's not ready. Sorry, they got most of it in, but we have to get some clips from Milwaukee pack out to get it all set up. It works with 3 very functional vehicles right now.
Nice.
We are in the process of installing an inverter and a specialized heater that Bill found in New Hampshire. They make for Verizon and a bunch of other companies that will allow us to also splice in the construction truck should we need to. So we're trying to make sure we have backups for everything. We've gotten a little creative about it. We still are going to need a trailer and things like that. But at the moment, we have sunk some money into it, and all of our trucks are working nicely. The van looks great and works great. And Tom should be done with that by sort of the middle of next week of getting it all kitted out. And then that's his primary drive. So that is a good thing. We wanted to talk a little bit more about the Weldon. We're just taking a couple more days because Donna McNichol, our counsel, has said, I want to go through because Massachusetts has said there's some new language that you have to put in everything, which is just nothing that will be a problem, but a restatement of just inclusionary language. And she's got a new template that she's developed, and she wants to put it all in that template, which I think is a good idea. So we know that
is this an agreement with the property owner or with each individual client? Or
it is actually with Alternative Telecom.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Who is actually going to do the inside work?
Our contract with our
with our sub
contract.
What's their name again?
Alternative Telecom. And they're really pretty well good to go. So we have to get this signed first, but we're pretty close to actually have people in there to begin boring and to work their way through. So we have made some good progress. So I asked Bill just to take a minute here. I want to put this up to talk again a little bit about, I will shrink this down, to talk a little bit about how this all works. And because it is different from what we've done before. And it's for you, it's also partially for people watching this, because I think it's important to remember that all of the infrastructure that the town does things like water and sewer, they work almost exclusively within their own rights of way. They don't have to talk to anybody. They don't have to get permission from anybody, because all of those easements with private companies were signed 100 years ago. And when, like, for example, when the Main Street work was done, which was some great work done on all the water, they didn't have to ask anybody. They didn't have to do any make ready, because they work in areas where Greenfield owns the rights of way for the infrastructure. GCET is completely different. GCET never owns the infrastructure because we're so new. We're coming in after all of these agreements. We're not allowed to ride on top of those agreements. So we have to start from scratch, which is why no one says, if you want to be in my building, you have to pay for my water pipes. But everybody says, if you want to be in my building, you have to pay to bring fiber in to do it.
John, are you sharing your screen?
No. Yes, I am.
Okay.
I am.
Just wanted to check.
Yes, I am. This is what I want. And so, but thank you.
No, I was wondering, I
Is
mean,
the public seeing it?
I assume you want the public to see it. That was why I was asking.
Yes, I am sharing it, and it is
Okay,
because
good.
it's a direct HDMI.
I see.
Good question.
It is
I
a
don't
very
see
good
that it
question.
says-
Thanks. Thank you.
Something's
I've
changed.
been on that Zoom twice this week where,
Yeah.
where the PowerPoint was not visible.
Yeah.
On the Zoom. Yes, thank you.
Me too.
So I
Can you
just
see it
wanted
now?
to sort of talk through a little bit how this process works.
Yeah, so I mean, I think John touched on a pretty, important part of it, about how we don't really own the right of ways, and the ones that we do are very limited, if at all. So I kind of try to break it down to kind of four areas where I think a lot of the complexity comes from. One of that is private property and access scheduling. Like John was saying, we don't own the right of ways. We have to cross cables through somebody's yard or property. We have to talk to them. And we have to go through that whole process and say, can we do this? And they say, I don't know. It's not my building. We have to find the right contacts, which is harder than sometimes we think. We're also, when we're building out these networks, we're building out shared infrastructure in somebody's building. So somebody owns this building, we're coming in and we're putting in essentially a small network throughout this building. A building that we've never been in, building that is not maintained by us. So we have to make sure that we are working with them, coordinating. Can we do this? Are we allowed to put this here? Oh, we can't do that here. So all that is important because this infrastructure is providing internet to people. So like if somebody cuts the wire in the building, we have to go and fix it.
And legally, we have to own it. The anti-aid amendment says we cannot put something in people's buildings and have them own it. So we have to have agreements that say we are going to have something we own in your building in perpetuity that we will take care of. It's not that people aren't willing to do that, but that is a whole nother level of complexity and liability,
Right.
that we have to work our way through, because the anti-aid amendment in Massachusetts says that a public company cannot invest money where the benefit accrues primarily to the private enterprise. There are many towns that just say no, because it can be a thorny issue and it is a little bit of a judgment call. So there are lots of towns, and Greenfield has in the past come back to us and said, nope, you can't do this. And we say, yeah, actually we can. But we have, it's people are all acting in good faith. It's just a difficult issue because there is actually no firm answer of what you can do and what you can't do. It's the judgment of who benefits most. So we say we benefit the most from this, and we say that because we still own it, so we could just go and take it. We're not going to do that, but we can, and legally we have to, for us to be able to go into those buildings.
Could you do the two acronyms for people, MDU versus SFU for the public?
MDU means multiple dwelling unit, which
Okay.
is generally an apartment building, but
Okay.
it can be a big house that's now a triplex or has 4 apartments in it, and SFU is single family.
Thank you.
And on number 3, a lot of times these buildings are pathway constrained, right? So if this is an existing building that was old, there's not going to be ducts in the wall. There's not going to be pathways, or if there are, they're already compacted and already maximized and used. So we're now trying to come in and bring service to people in that building. And we have to maybe even do some construction, which again, now we're touching somebody's building, we're cutting walls, we're messing with things in their space. And people can be very sensitive to that, which I get, you know what I mean? So like, we have to make sure that we're working with the landlord and tenant. And then the last one is
He was right. Now I'm sure.
Uh-oh.
Thank you, David.
and then the last one is basically we go unit by unit. So that's just to get everything to the building. Let's say you have 8, 10, 12 people inside that building. Now we have to go install each one of those. And that means going to the unit, coordinating with the customer. And sometimes that means we have to work with the landlord to coordinate when we can do certain work inside the unit. Are the people there? So there's a lot of little overhead things that start to add up for coordination and why it makes it complex. So what I actually did is if you go down, scroll down a little bit, I used the Weldon build recently that we just did as an example of some complexity that we run into. Basically, we had to get fiber into the Weldon building, right? So the Weldon had fiber literally across the street from basically every angle. Path 1, which was the fastest path, the one that would have been, in our eyes, the cheapest, quickest to do, was held up by permitting. It would have taken 2 years for a make ready to happen, to go to one pole. So we said, well, if there wasn't other external factors like the grant, maybe we could do that. Again, not great.
Just for reference, the North build took 4 years.
Yeah.
For one pole, we can't go on it.
Right.
We cannot go on it. Right. So the second option was to install a new pole, which seems really silly because now we have another pole, which is what we did next to the other pole. We could do that because it was on the Weldon's property. They owned it and no one could say anything about it. And we could come from a pole that we already have the license on to that pole. Silly. There's 2 poles, but there's always a reason why, and it's usually regulatory if it doesn't look right. And then option 3, which is if we couldn't do the pole, if the Weldon said, no, we can't do that, we don't want that. Option 3 would have been coming across a parking lot, pathway 3, and it would have been very disruptive, would have been cutting up a lot of pavement, would have been much more expensive, much more time consuming to get to the building. So this isn't unique to the Weldon. We do this for pretty much any type of building, like an MDU or any type of big building that has this problem. So we have to figure out to get into the building. Sometimes it's easy. Sometimes we can just do it because we have the license or the poles right there and it just works. But sometimes we can't. And now we're looking at something that could be a couple grand to, tens of thousands to do just for a simple hookup to the building. So I figured that would be a good example of just how in depth we have to get with these.
I think it's also just another example of when people put conduits in, there have been conduits to some of these buildings for almost a century. So back then, people thought, well, why should I pay for this? I'll let the utilities come in. So there are conduits to many, particularly like Leiden Woods or places like that, where there is conduit, but it's not owned by Leiden Woods. It's owned by the telecom companies who don't care to share it, which is their right. They're the ones who paid for it. So it ended up being
they're the ones that own it. They're not the ones that paid for it. The taxpayers paid for it in most
right.
cases. They just ended up owning it. So it's that's a different.
Fair enough.
Right.
But
yeah,
it's another aspect of being a newer utility coming along quite a bit later than sort of all of the settled work that was done for older.
And we have been working with there's some building owners in town who, when they're building out a new building or they're upgrading a building, they contact us. They say, what can we do to make sure that service is ready for you? And just that one conversation, because we don't know what everybody's doing, can save thousands of dollars because it could be as simple as, oh, we're putting in new conduit. We can do it for you right now, and it's super cheap. And then the whole pathway thing you see here is done. And we get to move on to that second layer of doing what we do. But yeah, so it really just depends on if we can get scheduled or if somebody speaks up in time.
Almost all access is owned by someone.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really the core of it all, is you can't just go anywhere because people own the access to everything and they all want to be paid.
Right. So talking about specifically using like the Weldon as an example here, there's a couple big components to making the service actually work for these MDUs and future services. So on the left side there, we call it the head end. And there's a specific unit called an optical network terminal. It's a pretty big unit. I mean, maybe like 7 or 8 feet tall. That's in charge of connecting everybody who's going to be on the service, at one location. It's a very critical piece of infrastructure. It has high redundancy, in temperature environments to keep it from overheating. It's a pretty important piece. Once we leave the POP, we go into what I call the public right of way, because that's what we've been talking about here, where you see those. If you ever look on the utility poles or up in the lines, you'll see like weird little black canisters up there. We call those fiber distribution points. So those are installed along the right of way, essentially, where along miles of fiber. And we basically connect other parts of the network together through there. Once we got into like the Weldon there, which is like the private property boundary there, we either come in through a conduit or we can come off of a utility pole to the building and then into the actual building. That black line you see between the right of way and the property line is the outside plant cable. That's what they're pulling up north. They've been pulling up north, for example, the cable that's going to have all the fibers in it. Those types of cables can have anywhere from 12 fibers all the way up to 144, 288, hundreds of fibers that are in those cables. So like, again, critical infrastructure that we're running throughout, miles of the right of way. And then when we get up to that property line, like the Weldon, or in here, when we go into the building, we have to have conduit installed, or we have to have some type of pathway into the building. Once we get into the building, there's kind of two components here. There is the fiber distribution terminal, which we install in a location centrally, like in the telecom closet. That's going to be what everybody shares in the building. So that could either be, we work with the landlord to say, hey, we would really like to put it here. And they may say, no, you can't put it there. Or we need to put it here. Then from that box, we then have the customer premise. So each unit has to have a cable that runs from the fiber distribution terminal to each unit, where a jack and a optical network terminal is installed. So that's from a high level. There's a lot of moving parts. So one of the key things is the one-time building, the building, the fixed work, the routes, the building, the shared cable, the OSP cable, all that's kind of one-time build that feeds many people inside those units. So we repeat the installations for each unit. We go on site, and then for every unit we put a fiber jack in, put the ONT in. We just keep doing it until everybody in the building has service.
Do you want to go on the riser one or the next?
Oh, you can put the riser one up there if you want. For some buildings, this one's pretty more technical here.
This is the Weldon.
So for the Weldon, we have a diagram that we have to kind of put together as we start to bring those fiber distribution points into the building. We have to figure out how we're going to get to each floor, because the Weldon's a huge building. So we've had to kind of go a little bit more in depth in our design of how the fiber comes into the building, where we're placing certain components of the network, and how those cables are going to run to the units. So that's pretty much, without getting too in the weeds with how this stuff works. We have to kind of make sure we go through all the ways the cables will work. That way we can actually do the install.
This, like, for example, down here in the bottom, this is what we've been talking about up till now. We've been talking about getting to the building.
Yes.
Once we're in the building, this is the work that needs to be done. Because one of the things that I've been struck with is one of the things that Bill is doing in configuring is every time we add on to the network, you're adding thousands of discrete locations. Every one of them has to be named, because that's the only way you can say, go here and do this work here, route here, not here.
Like connecting points.
Yeah,
all the
Like, right,
connecting
like,
points.
like,
All have to be named and then configured so that signals can be routed.
Yeah.
I mean, it sort of feels like magic when you're doing it, but it's because there's tens, hundreds of thousands of routing points within just our network, and we actually don't have a really big network where you have to be able to tell everything where to go at every second of every day. So just in this building alone, there are thousands of points that need to be properly identified and named and kept in a giant, he's got a giant table. Then it all has to be related down to the individual fibers within each cable that we have. And they come in different colors. There's color codes, and we have things that auto-generate giant tables that say how all these things intersect. And it's a level of complexity that I just think people don't really understand how much work goes into it. So if you want to make it look like it's effortless and magical, it is sort of magical. You have to name everything its true name, and it's to make it work.
If you go back to the other slide real quick, just to show each one of those points, you see that like from the fiber jack, the fiber distribution terminal, the optical network terminal, anything there can fail at any time.
Right.
So, somebody hits a pole and that fiber distribution case falls into the road and shatters, the welder goes down. Right. And we need to have the ability to trace that all the way back through the network to find where could that have happened, all the way down to somebody who's living inside one of the customer units saying, my Wi-Fi doesn't work. Well, is it an issue in their unit? Is it a physical issue? Is their cable not connected? Or did something in a closet in the Weldon get broken? Right. So we have to be able to figure out where that is for every customer, for every service, and for every call. So that's why this stuff takes time to design and implement the best you can correctly for the critical stuff. So when the issues come up for the customers inside their units, you can kind of know where to look and where to start. Right. But yeah, so we have to know all of this before we even really start doing installations.
Right. Because there will be times when everything has to all of a sudden automatically and instantly reroute itself around a problem. And you can't do that unless everything is configured to the point where, and your rules are in place. This is all, this is zero me, 100% him. And it is, it just takes a long time to do it correctly because it doesn't come pre-configured. And it's my favorite one. It's not water. You don't just screw it onto the end and it comes out the tap. It's just not.
So we do work very hard to try to standardize where we can, which I think kind of goes into the next and last slide I kind of have here is the Weldon is a pretty special project for GCET in the sense of it's a new standard that we're going to implement. It's a new build. It's a new delivery method that we're going to use. So we have to work on new SOPs. Right, for our teams, being able to troubleshoot these new devices. Everything in the Weldon is new and probably one of the most cutting edge technologies out there in regard to service delivery. We have to build back office and provisioning, which is our back office talks to our billing systems and all that. We have to integrate these new services and the way we're delivering the service into that. And we have to have new hardware, new inventory support, new SKUs. All of that needs to come in and be managed. And it's great. It's great because this is a really big upgrade to GCET's network and infrastructure and capabilities. It just takes time with our staff. We don't have a huge team to just be able to throw out all this and get all of this done all the time. But in regard to this new method, it's going to be great for future MDUs. It's going to help lower long-term support costs because we're able to have better equipment installed in the field now, and more predictable experiences for residents as opposed to fixed wireless.
Yeah, more robust. We will owe less fees to utility pole owners than we do now, like 6 figures less when we get this completed on an annual basis.
Right.
So it is worth doing. It will not happen overnight. We will bring this out incrementally. We will go into new areas with this. We will replace current infrastructure that we have with this over time, because the ultimate goal we have is to move towards this, to move towards fiber to the prem, to have infrastructure that runs through our rights of way that we can control, that we're not dependent on other people, including our own competition, for access to the things that we need to do. That is a huge project, and it takes a lot of time. It takes capital, which is something that we've been very starved of late. So we have applied for capital again, and it will have a very profound effect on how fast or slowly this goes, depending on how much access to capital we have. But the Weldon is 100% worth doing all on its own, and always would be. But he's right. This is how we are going to deliver service into the future. It's a big upgrade for us, huge upgrade. And it is moving to a system that is not only more robust, but it's more scalable, it's more future flexible. It's just better.
I mean, to put it into perspective, this new system that we're putting in place that we're implementing has the capability to offer to the Weldon up to 5 gigabits per second per customer. Right now, we only offer 200 megs to our residents. This is like quadruple more than that. So like that's a huge jump in technology. That's not even, I mean, I don't want to say half of the world, but that's a huge jump. It is to see. So it's definitely setting the groundwork for the future, and even in the immediate installs that we're doing for other MDUs and potentially even single family homes. So it's a pretty big.
The only thing I would add is we are also not going with a closed garden system. We're using open source so we can be interoperable. The first iteration of internet across the country was through proprietary systems, and people who brought those systems in eventually found out that the life cycles that were being forced on them to upgrade hardware, to pay new license fees, was just not workable. And it's certainly not workable for a public entity who's really looking to keep costs low for people too. So there's been enormous changes in the sort of the telecom world in the last 5 or 10 years. And not just, yes, in the actual hardware, the delivery methods, but also in how people are thinking about it and how they're trying to figure out some way to be sustainable going forward and having some control over what they do, because it's the only way that to ensure that not only will it be robust enough to be physically around in 50 years, but the systems are all controllable by the people who own them, instead of having everything be rented, everything be a subscription, where control over the network doesn't actually reside with the people who own it at all. So.
I have a question,
Sure.
maybe two. Just last night's Zoom that I was on, we were talking about the use of the electronic board that the public can utilize in the library. So that falls back on when the library was built, for example. And then I know there's times when people complain about the traffic lights, and the DOT came in and did this, and the traffic lights can't be fixed, and they couldn't hold the people that had ripped up the highway down there. This is the corner of Pierce and Federal. Mm-hmm. So I'm assuming that the contract that we have with Alternative Telecom means if there's a glitch, then it's on them if it's theirs. If it's not theirs, then once we're in there, we're responsible. Am I understanding this
You
right?
are correct.
Like, we've got to hold them accountable to be sure they're doing a great job before we can even get into these units and say it's working. Yay. On the ground floor, we have a choice between, and I'll remind people that people can still select Xfinity if they want to, or they can choose GCET. Because there are a couple of people who go like, oh no, I don't think I want to do anything. And they're used to the, and that's the old wiring, and that's the mess and the stuff that even the Xfinity people have said it's disgusting and all of the interconnected wiring that they have there.
And normally for smaller MDUs or things that aren't so, I don't want to say grant based, but normally we do the installation for everything, right?
Right.
We very rarely job out the inside wiring that we typically do, just because we don't usually install 104 units on new one, 105, because that's, I mean, because we don't have customers who sign up for it yet. So we typically go by unit and say, hey, let me know when you're out of contract, we'll come by and we'll do it. So we need to have a contracted labor to be able to deliver those timelines. That's why we had to do that.
But it's your engine, it's your,
Yes.
it's GCET's engineering,
Yes.
GCET's design, it's GCET's management and maintenance
We own it all.
of the system. So it's
Right.
not like the traffic lights, you know, it's not like a thing where it's like, now the town is
Right.
beholden to a piece of
Right.
software or
That's it.
technology that we don't have any control over.
Exactly.
So that's,
Right.
and that's a great example of like why this is so awesome, you know, because
It
there's
is.
so many things that are technologically maybe within our reach, but somehow just what's available to us, we are not contractually allowed to even intervene with them.
Right.
You know, I don't know if somebody in this town is able to fix the traffic lights, but they're not allowed to.
Right.
You know, it's almost like
Yeah.
a right to repair kind of problem. So
Right.
GCET, it's like,
exactly a
you
right.
know, we own it, we
Right.
control it. What our contractor is doing is per our spec.
Right.
Right.
So it's
Exactly.
like, that's it.
Right.
So, yeah,
Two different things.
very different.
Different things. So like they're gonna be doing the wiring up into the unit for the Weldon, and then our team's gonna come in and do the installation of the, you know, the ONT and that stuff, you know, in the
Yeah.
unit, once they get the jack and everything there. But we've had to provide them all that information. If you look at the RFPs that we sent out, we had to write out tons and tons of stuff for them.
Yeah.
It was 10 times more work to do that than it would have been to just have our guys do it.
Right.
But we don't have the capacity to do it
Right.
to meet the demand. So that's why we had to do it that way. So the stuff that we're contracting out, we had to make sure that we saw the riser diagram we had to do to give them to somebody to say, this is the work we need done.
And not all MLPs do. Some of them
Right.
just say, we'll take your system, and then 5 and
Right.
10 years down the road, they really regret it.
Right.
Because they do not control
Right.
their own network.
Well, you're constantly paying outside contractors
Oh,
to deal with
yes.
anything. I mean, I don't want to,
Right. Yeah.
you know, I mean, I watch closely what's happening in Vermont because it's happening in very different ways. There's really very few entities that are building internal capacity,
Right.
Mhm.
right? So it's just a lot of grant money that's going into doing similar things
Right.
because there's no local capacity.
We probably started,
that
we
grant-
probably started with Kenny Wynn's bucket truck, though. He used to fix the traffic lights. Probably, that's probably what we got.
I mean, we
Back in the day, exactly.
Right.
Because I've talked to Fernando.
Retired 20 years ago.
yeah.
One of the reasons we've done so well with grants is that we actually have our own capacity. We can build our own network. I'll remind you, for the first round of grants, there were 4 recipients in Massachusetts: Comcast, Charter, Verizon, and GCET.
Yeah.
So the model where you just have somebody who's a sort of a part-time manager and you sub everything out. Look, there are places where that's completely appropriate. A really tiny town is just never going to do that. So I'm not trying to poo-poo any way that people go at it. But it is not a model that gives you any control over the quality of your network, the pricing of what you offer to people, the
Force
long-term
upgrades.
sustainability, the forced
Well,
upgrades.
Someday we want to be the ones that are the third-party vendor, you know,
Totally.
for the
Right.
vendor for the
Yes.
municipality that can't do it on their own.
Yes.
Right, right.
100%.
So, and it's one reason,
Right.
yeah. So I think we just wanted to go over again and say, this is all that goes into it. And this is why the Weldon is really important to us. It's great all on its own. If we just did it because we wanted to bring it to the Weldon for reasons of digital equity and building out in Greenfield, that would be enough. But it is a lot more than that for us. And there's a lot more work that we do that's involved in it because, you know, we're wrapping backbone up north, right? And we will have a hybrid approach. But this same way of looking at it, this will be the basis of how we expand out in the future. In the beginning, it'll be funded by grants because that's been the only capital we've been able to access. And that's true for an awful lot of people. That's why grants exist. They're a little bit thinner on the ground than they used to, but we will certainly keep looking as much as we can, because bringing in stuff like this, it involves some investment. There is tremendous payback for that in terms of long-term sustainability and even profitability for municipal light plants. But in this sense, we're like any business there is. You have to be able to invest. You have to have access to capital. You have to leverage your debt appropriately as a business to grow in ways that bring you future profitability. And for us in this year, it's mostly grants, which is in some ways even better because a grant doesn't leave you with a lot of debt to pay back. But this sort of this is how we're choosing to use the capital that we got through the grants, which is to build a system that we'll be able to control and will be sustainable going forward. Okay. Anything else? Any other questions about this? Okay. The North Build update. There's more and more equipment in Severance. The same thing that we're talking about here, the same kind of configuration and naming all the tens of thousands of transit points and routing points that we need to. All that work is going on there. 3 days a week, you see Tom and Bill out in the bucket trucks. They're physically in people's neighborhoods. We have people come and say, hey, we see you in our neighborhood. So we're going as fast as we can to do the physical work, to get all that stuff ready. And we're pretty well on schedule. It's just a big undertaking. It takes a while.
I think it's a good example too, comparing it to the Weldon, like we've done all the engineering. We have staff that can do some of the work, but for some of the big cable pole that we've talked about up north, we don't have the trucks to do it.
Right.
So we've had to call in some people to do it for us because we don't have, even if we couldn't justify it sitting around.
Yeah.
Right.
For these big builds.
Yeah.
So that's why we have to have special, but we have to be very specific. They're coming in just to do the work. They're not coming in to say, hey, there's something wrong with that. You know what I mean? So we have to make sure all of our ducks are in a row. Right. And our guys are out there pulling, lashing up the cable and getting it all ready as best we can. So that was just a good example of same thing at the Weldon has happened in the north. It's just a little bit of a different application.
Right. They will come in and build the spec, and there are companies that exist because it is such a niche, specialized application. You can't spend $500,000 on a truck you're only going to use for a couple of years.
Right.
So, but you have to tell those people exactly how you want it built, because they'll just do whatever you tell them to. They have no
Whatever's on the plan.
Yep. Whatever's on the plan is what they do. Yep. So
Or not.
and yeah, really. So we do need an executive session for this, and it is to enter in to executive session for reason number 10 to discuss trade secrets or confidential, competitively sensitive, or other proprietary information. I'd like to recommend that maybe we state before we go in that we will come out only to adjourn. We have the second Tuesday as the month as our regular date, so I don't think we need to set another date. But if we do state that and vote to go in, then it's okay that I just stop recording. And we can just, as long as we state that the only thing we will do is come out and say, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Okay. Is there a motion to go in executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Right. Jennifer?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Yes.
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 Okay. So I'm stopping recording